In the middle of the dark night at sea, the ship tilted violently in towering waves, and Jesus Christ stood firm on the deck like a living lamp. Not long before that, the ship had quietly left the harbor at night, the port lights fading into the distance, and many people breathed a sigh of relief. Father Daniel clutched a leather bag full of money, stared toward the cold shoreline, then turned away as if cutting off all ties. Mary pulled little Lily close to her chest, hiding in a dark corner, her eyes constantly alert. Teenager Alex leaned against the railing, tossed a coin into the water, smiled defiantly, but his eyes were sad. Captain Henry stared at the map and the compass, his hands clenched white with tension. Sailor Thomas murmured prayers, repeatedly touching his talisman, looking out at the sea and then glancing around at the passengers. In the cramped cabin, passengers fought for space, argued over blankets and water, each carrying their own private fears. A cry rang out as little Lily was shoved into, and Mary bent down to shield her child, silently enduring it. At the end of the pier, Jesus Christ stepped aboard, with no luggage and no noise, only his white robe standing out. He walked down the ship's corridor, quietly observing the weary faces, and a few people turned away. Father Daniel saw him and pulled his leather bag closer, pretending to be annoyed, though his throat went dry. Teenager Alex blocked his path in provocation, but Jesus' calm gaze left the boy confused. Mary caught that gaze, her breathing softened, as if for the first time she felt safe. Little Lily looked up at the white robe, stopped crying for a moment, her small hand gripping her mother's hand. Sailor Thomas frowned and muttered that a stranger brought strange things, then hid his anxiety. Captain Henry heard reports that a strange man had boarded the ship, frowned, and could not keep his eyes steady. The wind began to shift, the sails snapped violently, and the wood creaked. A drunken passenger fell and hit his head, blood flowing, and the crowd backed away. Jesus Christ knelt and placed his hand on the wound. Warmth spread, and the bleeding stopped. Rumors spread across the ship. Some sought a miracle, others only wanted reassurance. Father Daniel pushed forward and whispered, asking if there was a way to turn bad things into good. Jesus did not speak. He only looked at the leather bag for a long time. Teenager Alex sneered and said not to pretend to be holy, then turned away, his hand trembling slightly. Mary asked for warm water for little Lily, but was brushed aside because water was running low. Jesus touched the nearly empty water barrel, and there was suddenly enough water to be shared equally. Sailor Thomas was displeased, saying that the sea gives nothing for free. A thunderclap exploded, the ship shook violently, the lights swayed and screams rang out. Captain Henry ran onto the deck, saw black clouds spiraling, and felt the wheel grow heavy. The wind tore the sails, the masts shrieked, and panicked passengers rushed onto the deck. Sailor Thomas shouted that someone had brought bad omens, and the crowd needed someone to blame. A few people pointed at Jesus Christ, yelling that disasters had begun ever since he boarded the ship. Chaos surged. Teenager Alex was shoved down and nearly slipped on the wet deck. Mary shielded little Lily and was pushed back against the railing, her face turning pale. Jesus stepped forward and stood between the crowd and the railing, his robe soaked with rain. Captain Henry shouted for everyone to step back, but he himself panicked as memories of an old accident returned. Jesus looked at him for a long time, his gaze reopening a buried wound. Sailor Thomas stirred the crowd, insisting that a sacrifice had to be made immediately, and a few people began grabbing ropes. Father Daniel panicked and pointed at teenager Alex to save himself. Teenager Alex realized that everyone was ready to abandon him. Little Lily coughed and screamed from the thunder, her lips turning pale, and Mary trembled as she begged. The crowd still roared like waves, human voices drowning out the wind. Jesus knelt and placed his hand on little Lily's chest, and a warm light gently spread. A few people froze in confusion, as if slapped awake by their conscience. Jesus stood up and stared straight at the crowd, holding a long silence. Captain Henry fell to his knees and confessed his past sin before everyone. Father Daniel looked at his leather bag, now heavy as stone, his throat tightening. He knelt down and confessed that he had fled from his debts and abandoned his family. Teenager Alex burst into tears and confessed that he had stolen because no one wanted him. Mary hugged little Lily and confessed that she had once thought of jumping into the sea. Other passengers stepped forward one by one and spoke out their own darkness. Sailor Thomas trembled as he removed his talisman and confessed that he had once incited a sacrifice. Jesus placed his hand on the man's shoulder, and warm light spread out. The wind softened, the swirling clouds slowed, and the waves grew less violent. Captain Henry ordered that people be saved first, not the cargo. Father Daniel handed over the money and the debt papers and wrote a letter of apology. Teenager Alex pulled at the torn sail ropes and offered his coat to cover little Lily. The sea became completely calm, the clouds parted, and dawn opened the path. Jesus Christ stood at the bow of the ship, leaving peace for everyone behind him.